Hi, everybody. Ron Placone here, back from vacation, feeling good. Good to be back, getting back in the swing of things. So, one of the things that we talked about a good bit on the show was the documentary Montage of Heck, the documentary on Kurt Cobain that came out recently on HBO that Kurt Cobain's daughter, Frances Bean, as well as Courtney Love, did have a hand in. And in the video and segment I made about it, I talked about how one of the things that was very uplifting for me about the film was that for the first time, there was actually Nirvana music in it because his daughter and Courtney Love were involved. There was actually Nirvana music in this one. And there was some pretty cool stuff in there music wise that I had not heard before. So just the fact alone that I got to hear some Nirvana music that I had not heard, you get to hear Kurt cover a Beatles song. It's pretty cool. And just that alone made it more than worth my time. One of the things I also pointed out was that in terms of the story, it didn't really go into much that had not already been surfaced before in some regards. And some of the video footage was a bit like, oh, wow, that's out in the ethers. And Kurt Cobain's family responded a bit negatively to a lot of that. That was all in the former segment. Now, Buzz Osborne wrote about his response to the film, and I think his response is very interesting to note. First of all, Buzz Osborne is the singer and guitarist for the Melvins. And the Melvins was a group that Kurt Cobain looked up to an awful lot when he was coming up. At one point, allegedly, Kurt auditioned for the Melvins when he was in high school, and he was so nervous that he just kind of froze and couldn't remember how to play anything. It was just like, oh man, and just missed opportunity. So the Melvins was a group that Kurt Cobain and I think the rest of Nirvana as well had an awful lot of respect for. And Buzz was there from the beginning until the very end. And he points that out. He's like, we played their last show. We started with them. We went to high school with them. And he points out a few things that I thought was pretty interesting. In fact, he says that, quote, 90% of it is total BS. There's the one thing no one gets about Cobain. He was a master of jerking your chain. This is from Buzz himself. There's a story in the movie about Kurt allegedly having sex with a girl that was borderline special needs. Apparently, according to Buzz Osborne, that story is completely nonsense. It never happened. And this was also in the Kurt Cobain journals, which I talked about how I thought it was very kind of disturbing that that book was published at all because it was literally a publication of his journals. I purchased it as a teenager thinking it was a tour diary that was meant for publication, how some artists will do stuff like that. It was not. It was literally photocopies or Xerox copies of his handwritten journals. And as soon as I opened it, I thought, this is not what I thought it was. I regret buying this, and I don't know why this is in the ethers. But anyway, apparently that story was just complete nonsense. And Buzz's reason for it makes a lot of sense. He's like, look, we lived in a small redneck town, quote unquote, where if anything like that were to happen, we would have known about it before sunset, is the way Buzz puts it. And I had never heard about this. Buzz had never heard about this, went to high school with Kurt Cobain, lived in the same small town. He's like, this is just a completely made-up story. He also said that Kurt living under the bridge in Aberdeen, which is a kind of famous folklore surrounding Nirvana, was featured in the song Something in the Way. According to Buzz, that's also nonsense. He's saying, I don't even think Kurt even stepped foot under the bridge, let alone lived under it. And he also, what else was the other one that he said was complete? Oh, this was interesting to me. And again, this is from Buzz Osborne. It's an article definitely worth reading. It's from the Talk House, but apparently the whole thing about Kurt Cobain's stomach issues, according to Buzz, that was nonsense. According to Buzz, Kurt just said that so that he could just continue to use heroin and try to have as little bit of judgment and backlash for that as possible. Again, this is according to Buzz Osborne. I don't know, who knows? I mean, I wasn't there. I don't think we'll ever know. But it's an interesting perspective nonetheless, and one that I had never heard until now. But Kurt said, this is the quote from Buzz Osborne himself. Kurt also told me there was absolutely nothing wrong with his stomach. He made it up for sympathy so he could use it as an excuse to stay loaded. Of course, he was vomiting. That's what people on heroin do. They vomit. It's called, quote, vomiting with a smile on your face. So that's an interesting perspective as well. And here's something else that another quote that I want to highlight here. I got to see Kurt in creepy home movies and Courtney nude, which for me was akin to staring into the sun. He also said, when Courtney speaks, the truth is certainly there, but God only knows where it begins and ends. In the 20 years since Kurt's death, the undisputed facts of some of her stories seem to change almost hourly. I remain unconvinced in regards to her testimony, and I don't think I'm alone. I find it amusing that the filmmakers never bothered to fact check simple stuff like this and just took Kurt and Courtney at their word. So that was interesting to me because I have yet to find anybody in the public spotlight that will say a nice thing about Courtney Love. I used to live in Seattle, Washington. Some of my friends that were a bit older that were kind of coming up around the same time Nirvana was, a lot of those people knew Kurt. They knew the band. They had some point of reference, and they knew some of the folks in Soundgarden or something like that. And all the people I knew personally, never once did anyone of them have a nice thing to say about Courtney Love. And you kind of wonder, gee, why that is. And I think a lot of it has to do with ways that she presented herself. And I think Buzz Osborne kind of summed it up nicely here. There stands, this is him reacting to some of the footage in the movie. There stands a half-naked Kurt shaving, and right behind his back, his wife is parading around, showing off her naked breast and pouting to the cameraman, who I'm guessing was Eric Erlandson, ex-Hole guitarist and Courtney's former boyfriend. Really, Kurt probably had to deal with stuff like this. I'm paraphrasing there to be FCC friendly. Kurt had to deal with stuff like that on a daily basis. My God, what a super colossal drag. I mean, a lot of that footage, you see how she was kind of out there and over the top, and then that probably did wear on him. But nonetheless, an interesting perspective, and it kind of really challenges the preconceived stories that have been accepted into the Nirvana storyline. So definitely a worthwhile read for all the Nirvana fans out there, and for anybody that has seen the Montage of Heck film. And you know, it's changed my perspective reading that on the documentary a little bit. Although I am still pretty happy about the music that was featured in there, and that alone definitely made it more than worthwhile for me. So for any Nirvana fan, I do still highly recommend seeing the film. But those are some important, some interesting perspectives in regards to the story that's presented there. This is Ron Placone signing out.